Morning, Gillian.
Morning, Libby.
What's happening today?
Well, we're doing our third scything session. This time we're on the Lark path between the Crankles, which is the old fish pond area, and the Abbey Gardens. And we're scything the nettles, predominantly nettles. What we're trying to do is get rid of the rank, the dominance, the nettle dominance. Normally, I'd say you should put the mower away at this time of year. Plant Life reckons we should be putting the mower away at this time of year, and that's quite true for your lawns. But for a place like this where there's rank stinging nettles and we're trying to increase the variety of plants and the habitats, then we have to do the nettles about once a month to suppress them. So that's what we're doing, we're scything.
And why is this better than mowing?
For many reasons, many reasons. It's kinder to wildlife. It doesn't chop them up as much as a mower would. And they can wildlife can actually, things like moles and scurrying creatures can get out of the way. We're not dependent on mowing machines, so we're not dependent on contractors to come and do the mowing for us, and we can mow when we want. Small parties can mow. It's very therapeutic. It's great fun doing something like this, and it's actually very easy. It doesn't hurt one's back if you've got your scythe set up properly. It's very therapeutic. You can mow small areas that a mower probably wouldn't be able to get into. And of course we're not dependent on fossil fuels, so it's helping in the climate change, in the climate emergency and the ecological emergency we find ourselves in. So it's basically a win-win situation, scything. And we've trained about 14 people, including the parks manager here in the Abbey Gardens, which is great news because she's going to take it back to the Gardner Rangers and perhaps do some in the Abbey Gardens as well.
And there seems to be a lot of interest from the public. I've noticed people saying you should be wearing black, like the Grim Reaper, and can I have a haircut?
Yes, I know, and I think that's another benefit of scything. It engages with the public in the community, so maybe also we will gain some new members, because if they like the idea of scything. Of course there is a downside to it. All this vegetation that we're cutting has to be raked up, and that's a very important part of the scything process, because we have to get the nutrients out of the soil. Where you see nettles, the soil is highly nutritious, and to encourage wildflowers and good herbs, you need less nutritious soil. So all this stuff that we're mowing has to be raked up. But luckily, I don't know whether you can see, but Julian is more or less getting it into what's called a windrow. All the vegetation gets...
That's a good thing, because there are all sorts of branches and rubbish.
It is very difficult because we're not mowing a rectangular field. If we were mowing a rectangular field, you'd be able to see a windrow. But the rakers rake in a quarter of the time that we do the scything. So they're perfectly happy raking. They didn't like raking a few years ago when we had mowers cutting this, because all the vegetation was left everywhere and cut up too small so that they couldn't really pick it up very easily. And the rakers are happy people as well, happy volunteers. So it is a win-win situation.
I noticed Julian's putting wood onto a pile there. What's going on with that?
Well, yes, you can see a pile over there. In the winter, we do other type of vegetation cutting. We don't do scything. We cut down, we do some pollarding of trees. We do some coppicing of trees. And we get rid of scrub and vegetation, and instead of burning it, we put it in piles, and they're called habitat piles, so that small mammals can shelter underneath them, and bees and bumblebees can make nests in them.
And snakes?
And snakes can shelter underneath them.
Do we know if they're being used?
We've got Water Meadows is carrying out biodiversity survey by biological recording all the time. There are members of our group who come out into the meadows and record all the life they see here. And they haven't found any snakes yet. They have little mats like roofing felt, and underneath them snakes bath underneath them. But they haven't found any yet. We have got a party of 5 moorhens, little baby moorhens on the river down there, but they wouldn't go underneath. They wouldn't use a habitat tile, but they would use some of this long vegetation that we're not going to get rid of. The wonderful thing about scything is that you don't have to do everything, and I'm very keen on keeping a particular plant called hedge mustard. You can see a hedge mustard. Over there, there's a white, you might not be able to notice it, but over on the riverbank is a white flowered plant that's sticking up taller than the nettles. And that's called hedge mustard, or garlic mustard, or jack by the hedge. And that's one of the sole food plants for the orange-tipped butterflies. So I'm very keen on keeping those plants. And so scything can selectively, when you scythe, you can selectively keep plants. And here you see Julian, what's he doing? I can't remember the word.
Using his whetstone to sharpen the blade.
Yes, he's sharpening his blade. And you have to sharpen the blade about every 10 minutes to keep it absolutely sharp.
Must get through a lot of blades.
No. Talk to Libby about peening.
Yes. When you've sharpened your blade like this with a whetstone, many times, probably several months worth of scything, probably in our case, you don't have to do what's called peening the blade, which is basically using a little hammer and anvil to flatten the sort of 3 or 4 millimeters of the edge, so it can be sharpened again. Because you can imagine with repeated sharpenings using a stone, eventually you end up with a kind of rounded edge that won't sharpen any longer, and it has to be re-flattened. So you beat it.
And what's that called?
That's called peening.
Peening?
Peening, yes.
Really?
Yeah, do it on a little metal anvil that you put into a bit of tree trunk or something, and you sit down and you hammer away. And the notes of the peening hammer echo across the valleys.
You must let us know when you're peening next.
We'll give you a peening demonstration when the time comes. Yes,
Thank
we
you.
will.
Thank you.